Hello, and thank you for joining our discussion on the latest market research by ASUG, looking into how companies are using custom code and its impact on innovation and digital transformation. My name is Irit Gilat. I'm with Pillir, and I will be your host and moderator in today's discussion. Some housekeeping before we start. This session will be recorded, and we will share the recording with you by the end of this week. From the control panel on the right, you can submit questions. We will try covering as many questions as time permits. If we're not able to get to your question, we plan on responding to each of your questions personally via email. I'm pleased to introduce Josh and Vaidya, who will be joining me today to share their insights and views and help us understand what these market research numbers really mean and how they translate to reality. Joshua Greenbaum is an analyst at Enterprise Application Consulting. Josh has over 30 years of experience in IT and SAP industry, starting from being a computer programmer, system analyst, author, consultant, and later industry analyst, and generally a leading expert in the SAP market. Hey Josh, how are you today?
Great, thank you. Great to be here. And thanks for the lovely introduction.
Vaidya Aiyer is the CEO and founder of Pillir. Vaidya is a leader and innovator in the low-code space, specifically in ERP modernization. His 25 years of SAP experience basically has propelled the Pillir vision of providing solutions to accelerate modernization and digital transformation. Hi, Vaidya. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I'm showing our age here, but I guess together, you guys, well, together mean me, I guess, we bring over half a century of industry experience. So hopefully that will help bringing some wisdom to this market research.
We're going to do our best, definitely.
Good. So let's jump into the research and the data. Now, over the years, we've been talking to a lot of enterprises, a lot of SAP-focused enterprises. And while we see what each one of them is telling us, we wanted to better understand how the industry is behaving and how custom code and custom business processes impacting digital transformation, migration, innovation, and just being able to run IT landscapes. So what we did, we partnered with ASUG, the American SAP User Group, and which conducted an independent research on subjects. We had several goals. We wanted to understand if and how organizations use custom code, identifying how, what resources used, what budgets, how it's being allocated, and what part it takes when looking on the organization overall IT budget and role. We also wanted to examine what is the most valuable and mission-critical custom code and who is responsible for writing it, maintaining it, making changes. And lastly, what role it plays in helping or holding back businesses from moving forward, innovating, and migrating or digital transforming their business. The audience used for this research was 110 SAP-centric large enterprises in a variety of industries, including utilities, consumer products, and manufacturing, and several others. The people responding were from a variety of positions, including functional engineers, enterprise architects, and SAP application development positions. So we first wanted to see if the use of custom code to customize business processes is as prevalent as we thought it is. So ASUG first asked the participant if the organization used custom code. The answer was pretty much overwhelming, with 91% of US enterprises core essential business processes currently run using custom code that interface with SAP software. We then continue and ask them what percentage of the organization essential business currently run using custom code that interface, and 79% of responders have up to 50% of the core essential business processes currently running using custom code that interface with SAP. So Vaidya, Josh, were you surprised by these results? Let's start with Josh.
Well, honestly not surprised, but it's still a pretty big number and kind of gives you a pause. You got to really, makes you really think. I think it's important to remember that, from the beginning of R3 and through ECC and up until the current cloud era, customization was a good thing. It was actually being promoted as the thing to be doing with your SAP instance. And it was kind of necessary, even though SAP has all this deep industry functionality, is really known for it. Take an industry like food and beverage. Depending on what you're manufacturing or making, you can be doing process and discrete manufacturing simultaneously. And even though you're in the same vertical industry, making beer and making milk are pretty different things. So however much SAP can build specific vertical functionality into their standard product, there was always this tension, well, how do I step outside of that and do what I need for my specific business? So it was a pretty much a given there was going to be customization. I think IT was pretty much unable, if you will, to fight that. Here's the vendor pushing this concept of customization is a good thing. Here are the systems integrators riding at what started in the 90s as a business process engineering wave, coming in and doing these customizations. So there's a lot of customization that became part of the culture of SAP. I think, in particular, if you look at that, the one number, the more than 50%, 13% of these respondents said more than 50% of their core processes are running on SAP. That's huge. That's a huge hole in the IT budget for maintaining this code. And I think it really brings to the fore the complexity of the problem. That's a ton of code. Doing something about that isn't just a technical issue. It takes a lot more than that. So there's a lot to unpack here. I'll let Vaidya take a crack at it too. Go ahead.
So I actually absolutely agree to everything you said, Josh, and even the numbers. So I will also say I've been part of the problem as well. I started in about 25 years ago, and I've been in a lot of those implementations and as a systems integrator. And as you rightly said, customization was not bad at all. That is the only way we could solve the problems what business was asking for, right? And I remember this is this joke in the SAP landscape, right? That is, you call it after a certain point of customization, you call it ZAP, you call it ZAP. And I can say, looking at these numbers, probably 9 implementations that I've been involved in ended up being kind of a ZAP, like ZAP, right? So I'm not really surprised with these numbers, but the numbers do hit you. When you look at 91%, it does hit you. It's like, oh my God, that, it's subconscious, but now when it's like in front of you, it hits you, right? More than 50% of customizations, like 13% has got more than 50%. That is a pretty big number. Again, I don't want to say customization is bad because it is good from a business standpoint. Otherwise, how else would we have, done what we did in R3 and ECC? There was no other way out. But over a period of time now, where the technology is, it has on the IT side, it has become a technical debt. It's difficult to manage that, but you still have the business benefits. I don't think that goes away with
And we actually will look at the business benefits in a few slides, so we can look more into that. So next we looked on how and why custom code is being used, or the main reasons for custom code is to be used. People could choose multiple responses, so that's why you'll see the total is exceeding 100%. Now, the top reason to use custom business processes were regulations and the need to comply with them with 46%, and its contribution to innovation with 45%, following by the need to adjust business processes to the local regulations, geography, and the specific market needs or the local market needs. And then 32% of responders saw custom business processes as a way to gain competitive advantage. Vaidya, let's talk with you first on this one. In your experience, where does custom code plays the most or important role?
So out of these 4 categories, I would pick regulatory and localization. And the reason for that is, and it's a very typical approach when you do a large rollout, you come up with a global template, for you have a blueprint and you come out with a template that, you want to have a single instance in a best case scenario, and, try to come up with this global process. But that never really works when you try to roll out every country, because every country has got this localization requirements, tax requirements, compliance, and the laws change and all of those things. And slowly you have to customize it. There is no way out. So that's more like a forced customization. You really have to do it. And sometimes what happens is, a lot of customers cannot put it into one instance. And this used to happen a lot in the 2000s and even after that, actually, 2010 timeframe as well. The goal was to always have a single instance, but sometimes those localizations and compliance are so complex that it doesn't make sense. And then you have one more instance, and then one more, and then one more. Then you become a, regional instances, right? And that is also, in a way, custom. You really wanted to have a single instance with a global template, a little bit of customizations, and that's become blown out to have, so many instances. I know customers who are like 30, 35 ECC instances. So it's not a small number to maintain. So I would definitely pick that. In my view, the innovation and the competitive edge kind of goes hand in hand. Like if you want to have a competitive edge, you innovate. And if you innovate, you do get a competitive edge. So I'll kind of put that into a bucket. But that is as critical as the others as well. The only difference in my mind is the first two buckets is kind of a must have, need to have done, otherwise you cannot roll out. The second one is more about a little bit more forward looking and how to get ahead. So both of them are critical in my opinion.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, let's move forward. So as we're talking and looking on the landscape of a lot of different companies, we see that the amount of custom code applications varies from very few in small companies or mid-sized companies to hundreds and even thousands custom pieces of code and custom business processes in large enterprises. So what we wanted, we said, okay, that's great, but let's zero in on the most valuable applications, because there are a lot of them, but let's look on the ones that are critical or mission critical to the organization. What we've learned was pretty interesting. 45% of the most valuable custom SAP code apps were developed 6 or more years ago, and over 2/3 of those are maintained and developed by internal teams. I think that's those are multiple numbers that are pretty interesting. So Vaidya, why is the number? Why are these numbers so significant for the organization?
Actually, I think these numbers are better than what I thought. At least what I had in mind before I saw the survey, and that's why the survey is so valuable, because you've got some real data to look at, and that it's no longer subjective, right? And the reason I say that is, like even in my own personal case, I know that the programs and the Z programs that I wrote in R3 has been integrated at 4. Like I personally know that, because I know it has gone from R3 to the ECC, and now it's been remediated and other things, and gone through the years, and gone this, and there is like countless people and programs that has done 15-20 years ago has now come into S4, right? So I always had that impression when I said, okay, 45% 6 years ago, that is actually better than what I thought, honestly. But it's not a small number. It's not small at all. 6 years is a lifetime in the IT industry. One who started as a programmer is no longer a programmer in 6 years. They have absolutely moved ahead. So 6 years is a lifetime for sure. You definitely have a churn in that 6 years. People have moved to other projects, but most likely they're more than somebody else has taken their place, right? So 6 years is significant, and it's more. So 6 years is really the minimum level we are talking about over here. That means the people who have written the programs and who knows inside out, the tribal knowledge is not there anymore. to run that. The other significant number that stands out for me is the cost, right? 800,000+ for the most valuable custom code. That is a humongous number. I mean, really, I mean, you're talking about not the full SAP system. You're only talking about maybe 2 or 3 or 4 custom programs, which is valuable, and you're spending like 800,000 per year. And the value of or the cost of technical debt actually doubles every 2 years, 3 years, right? It doesn't go down. In fact, now with the pace of technology, it probably doubles every year. So 800,000 last year in an ECC is more this year, and then it's going to be more again next year. So that's why it is significant. 6 years is significant. The amount of spend is significant. And the internal teams, 60-70% is actually maintained by internal teams. That means a CIO is spending a lot on keeping the lights on instead of spending on innovations and something new. That's 60-70% is on just keeping the lights on. It's not giving you any competitive edge, no innovation. It's just making sure things are running. That's a pretty big number, actually.
Right. No, I'd love to comment on this as well, because this is, I love that you see this as sort of optimistic, because it's still pretty impressive nonetheless. And this is clearly talking about some of the big anchors that these IT organizations and the business side is facing. And I've been sort of conceptually working on the concept of business process debt as well. It goes hand in hand with technical debt. It may be that actually process debt, in fact, increases even more exponentially than technical debt, because obviously when your processes are falling behind, your business is falling behind. It's not just they're inefficient, they're now perhaps preventing you from doing things that you'd like to do. And I think that this is telling me, we are creatures of habit. We love, as humans, to sort of keep doing the same things all the time and maintaining this stuff, despite the fact that it's costly. As you said, Vaidya, the tribal knowledge is probably gone. We might not even be able to totally justify the use of some of these custom apps, but we just keep using them and using them. And I think this sort of, to me, also talks about the fact that for many, many years, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, the default has been, let's just do the technical upgrade, to heck with the functional upgrade. That's too complicated. That's too politically charged. That's too much. We'll just technically upgrade and really just keep maintaining all this technical and process debt over the years, 6 years, as you said. Totally, think of where we've come in e-commerce. Think of where we've come in just the use of personal technology. The cell phone. What phone was anyone using 6 years ago? Most likely, it was not a modern Android or iPhone. So these are big numbers. I think they really talk about this concept of debt and the anchors that are holding us back.
Yeah, I think just hearing Vaidya just talking about all these apps that I've seen companies documenting or not documenting changes as they're moving forward. So I bet you in a large percentage of these apps, people are not even sure what's the business logic behind it. Anymore.
Absolutely. Yes. I think a lot of companies did not. It's not possible to document everything. And Josh, if I can pull on to one thing that you said that, caught my attention, which is the business process debt, right? You're absolutely right that we all being technology guys, we think about technical debt, but the business process debt just adds on top of it, right? It's humongous. There is one more flavor that I can think about, which is the skills debt, right? Your IT team, 60% of the team is still working on technologies which is old and not the cloud technologies and not the new one. They're not, you're not able to ramp them up. So I think technical debt is the base, and this whole survey, and you're talking about technical debt, but there's so many things that add on. And business debt is definitely something that has got much more implications over here.
And the skills debt, well said, because that just piles it on. We're moving forward, and again, we're dragging these anchors behind us. It's not very efficient.
Yeah, kids out of college, who wants to learn ABAP?
Don't say that so loud.
So
No,
anyway,
you're right. It's not the leading edge language today, and so that's, you know, and in fact, well, we'll talk about low code and other alternatives in a minute, but yeah, that's a big issue.
yeah.
Okay. What's the next? So we spoke about the connection between custom code and innovation, but what we're seeing in the market is that actually a lot of companies are not deploying upgrades or security patches, because they're afraid of the impact of custom code. So we went and asked that question: how is custom code impact your innovation? What you can see here, there's actually a higher distribution of negative than positive on the impact on innovation by custom code. To name a few of these negative impacts, you can see barriers to upgrade, high maintenance costs, lack of expertise to maintain and enhance custom code and security as another one, which we mentioned these previously. And when we looked on the correlation with organization size, it's not shown here, but what we found that smaller organizations need to work harder with fewer resources to minimize the barrier of custom code to upgrades or migration, and to find expertise to maintain and enhance that custom code. So Josh, we discussed a lot about innovation in the SAP market, and everyone are talking about it. Has customization come a lot in your discussion with enterprises as something that hindered their ability to innovate?
Customization, if it isn't the number one topic, I quickly try to make it the number one topic for, you know, because I think, you know, I think this is a great, what I love about this research is we're seeing the dichotomy, the bipolar problem that these companies are having. On the one hand, yeah, 63% say it's a barrier. Right behind them, 50% say it's our unique user experience. There, you know, this is what we're struggling with, and you know, and I think this is, to me, really starts to set up a discussion about, you know, there isn't going to be a cookie cutter solution to this problem. We're not going to throw a switch and this is all going to go away or be lifted and shifted to the, you know, to some beautiful nirvana in S/4HANA Cloud. This is going to be complicated because there's these conflicting challenges. We need these customizations, but they're a barrier. We need to do this because we've always done it this way, but now we're changing how we are doing business. And I think, you know, we've all been in the room, I think, you know, where there's, you know, the classic is, you know, we're looking at an upgrade, we're looking at fit to standard. That's kind of where we're going, right? With in the S/4HANA space, well, there's a constraint on what do you call, you know, what does a customer record look like? And there's always going to be someone in, you know, particularly in a large organization in some line of business who says, well, you know, the way we deal with customers is absolutely unique. We need the record to look this way, and you know, I'm gonna die on this hill. And that in a way, that's why. Okay, we'll just do the technical upgrade. Let's not fight this functional battle because these things are complicated. I'm sure that, you know, that's an individual who probably said, yeah, he or she would say, yeah, well, you know, that custom code is a core component of what we're going to transform, and it's providing that unique user experience. So of course we have to keep it looking just that way. So I think we're seeing this problem of change management as well, that this stuff is not complicated. It's not a simple binomial kind of issue. We've got to really look at a lot of these customizations and weigh some complicated you know, pluses and minuses in order to figure out what to do with them.
All right, I think you're right. So you mentioned S/4HANA, and I guess kind of that's, you know, we talk about innovation, so we decided to let's speak specifically, you know, how that works with S/4HANA. So the question that we asked was, as your organization moving forward with S/4HANA and other SAP system upgrades, which of the following statements best describe the role of custom code? The other thing we asked was, with the migration and as they're moving forward, what is the likelihood that their organization will continue to use custom code? What we saw in is that custom code that is already in place, as Vaidya mentioned earlier, what is in place will not go away. At the same time, most respondent goals for the future is still to standardize the business processes, and limit customization. We also saw that the likelihood to continue using custom code is consistent across revenue. No matter the revenue bracket, the bulk of responders are extremely or somewhat likely to continue in using custom code with S/4HANA, as well as with as they're doing their cloud migration. So Josh, this data might be related to the concept of clean core, something that SAP has pushed as well. What are your thoughts on the subject?
Well, you know, and look, clean core is a great idea, but to be honest, it's aspirational in the short term for many companies. And it's a complex concept anyway, because which core are we talking about? You know, I think, you know, in the SAP world, the only core that matters is the SAP core, but in complex large organizations, there may be multiple different core systems. And at any rate, the question becomes, as you know, what happens when I go to a clean core? What happens when I'm on, you know, the latest and greatest S/4HANA? What does that mean to my vertical or micro vertical? Back to this problem, which we see exactly in this data. It's going to be a big leap forward, hopefully, in terms of lowering some of these maintenance costs that we talked about, cleaning up the mess of legacy code that's 6+ years old. But at the end of the day, it's hard to imagine that, you know, SAP, as amazing as it can be at building vertical functionality, is going to cover all the bases. So we're going to have to have custom code. I think the other thing, and I hate using this term, it's sort of one of those buzzwords, but if you're in an industry, you want to disrupt that industry, you want to change the game and get out in front of everybody and throw some elbows and, you know, do things differently. The first thing you're going to do is look at the standard business practices. These are going to be the ones that are actually embedded in a clean core, and say, well, why are we going to do that if we're disrupting? We want to do things differently. We're going to start changing what is standard practice. And ultimately and fundamentally, when you think that way, you look at a clean core, which you're going to need for that, particularly for that regulatory side, that is doesn't get disrupted. You're not going to disrupt how the Securities and Change Commission, or, you know, looks at you. But that stuff that isn't regulatory, you're going to want to change it. You're going to customize it. So I think we're going to always live in that world where, even though we double down on core and a standard clean core, we are going to be pushing out on the edge more and more innovation. We're just going to have to. Otherwise, where is your competitive advantage? It ceases to exist, at least from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
If I can just pull on to Josh what you just said, I think this tussle between having a clean standard system and having to customize and, you know, make something unique for my company, for my industry, you know, it's been there for the last 50 years. It's going to be there forever, because it's a very fundamental tussle, right? Like even in this slide, you know, if you see that 70% wants to standard their business process, but at the same time, 67% is saying, you know, we are going to use custom code. Like, it is always going to be that tussle. It's never going to go away, right? But I do think the whole clean core concept is, you know, picking up, especially in the SAP world. I think in the last 50, as you alluded to earlier as well, it was not a problem 10-15 years ago, because there was only one language, ABAP. Yes, you know, you may have to customize a lot, but there was only one language. Now there is like, oh my God, so many tools: UI5, Fiori, CPI, BTP. You're customizing in a lot of areas. It's not even one language, one area to customize. It becomes too much difficult to manage, resourcing, all of those things. So that's why this is becoming more of a problem, right? But one thing I'm happy about in this number is, you know, that is 70% of people who are at least thinking that, you know, we should standardize the process, and that is you know, it's an architectural way of thinking where, you know, it's like saying, okay, I need to be fit and I'm going to go to the gym, even though I know that I'm going to, you know, eat. And, you know, it's something like that, right? I know I'm going to customize, but I don't want to go, go and take my code and really bloat it out, I'm still going to try to make it standardized. And I think that's a good sign in the industry. The fact that 70% is saying that I want to standardize itself is a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree, 100%.
Yeah, and I think that's where the question comes, if where you want to do customization maybe separately than your core, and kind of eat the cake and keep it whole by having that and a clean core.
Right. Really, that is the basis, right? You need that foundation. Enterprise software is always, it's commoditizing and simultaneously chasing the next innovation. So, yeah, that clean core becomes the foundation for these next innovations that we maybe really haven't even thought about yet today, but they'll be showing up tomorrow and the next day pretty fast.
Yep. So, well, forward-looking, we spoke about innovation and custom code and how it's impact the business today. But what we went to explore was what technologies are people looking into or planning to use for their strategic innovation initiative. And I think the results here are interesting, though not all of them are surprising. So obviously you see ABAP and SAP Fiori as the top technologies that organizations are using today and plan and probably will continue to use. And then the two additional top contenders were Lowcode and nocode with 54% and RPA, or robotic process automation. What do you think about it, Josh?
Well, Fiori and ABAP naturally look at the audience. These folks, work with these tools all the time. I think the low-code, no-code is fascinating. And Vaidya, we talked about this earlier. I mean, to me, the original low-code, no-code is Excel, or actually Lotus 1, 2, 3. And and I was around a million years ago when that really showed up in the enterprise for the first time. And and I was a tech guy. I was the one running the show from the technology side. And all of a sudden, here's the folks in accounting who are becoming really hardcore spreadsheet jockeys and doing incredible work inside Lotus 1, 2, 3, and doing analysis and fundamentally affecting the business in a very, very efficient way. They were the low-code pioneers. And what I saw, and I continue to see with the current iteration of low-code, is this empowerment of the average, if you will, not so average. These guys were pretty smart, and they, but these were the business users. They weren't people like me who were, sitting in Fortran class a couple of years earlier trying to figure out what a subroutine is. They were just working in Excel, and I think that looking at low code, no code, as 50 in that number, I think this is great. This is the expectation that we should be having for the next, the next generation of business users coming in to use to affect business change without having to roll up their sleeves and be coders. RPA is similar. This is a next level of abstraction. That's what we've always done. I started in the machine code world. God forbid I would ever have to even think about IPSIDIC again in my life, because we don't need to think that way anymore. We can, we've abstracted up continually, and RPA is yet another level of abstraction that lets us do more and effectively program less, if you will. So I think this is perfect. I think this is how it should be. And I'm actually reassured in a way that these numbers are pretty solid. You've got statistically a very similar number of people talking about ABAP as you have talking about low code, no code. That's a plus. That's a real movement forward in my view.
I couldn't agree more. Josh, you mentioned about starting in machine code, and I didn't know that actually. I started in PLC programming as well. And I do also agree that one of the best low-code, no-code tools out there is Excel. I mean, it is still the most popular ones, right? The rapid application development is not a new concept. It's been there ever since programming started. How do you make it faster? How do you make it better, all of those things, right? The way I see this is your ABAP, 64%, but it is still a programming language. You still have to write code. Fiori, it's a framework, but you're still writing code. You still have to write JavaScript. You still got to, write the OData and all of those things. Whereas the next two buckets, low code and RPA, falls into the automation category. There are different kinds of automation. Obviously, RPA is, in my view, more of a business process automation, right? I'm literally capturing what the user is doing and automating that. Low-code, no-code is automation for the technical folks, right? Why write ABAP when your low-code, no-code tool can generate the output of an ABAP report or a transaction or whatever you're doing? If the low-code can generate that for you, then why you write your ABAP, right? Similarly, why write the JavaScripting in Fury when the low-code will generate that for you? Why we write the OData and the connectors and all of those things when any of the low-code, no-code tools will do it for you, right? So I do see RPA and no-code all fitting into the automation category. The world has been moving in the automation journey last 50, how many years we started off, right? And it will continue to move. It's not going to stop. After low code and RPA, something else will come in which will automate this too. So this is a train which has already started, and it's not, there is no way anybody can stop it. That's the reality.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. So before we jump into questions, we're getting short on time. Any last words on most important takeaways or anything that people should remember from this research?
Well, I'll just, I think what we're seeing here is sort of, in a way, it's to be maybe a little flippant, Waldorf. We have a problem in the SAP customer base. Luckily, we have solutions, though. And I think that really, what I like about this data, it's really highlighting, again, something that we all intuitively have known as an issue, but now we've got some real data behind it. And there's some some real positive messages in here about the understanding of the problem, about the reality of this sort of, this play off between innovation and, and efficiency. I think we're seeing in a way from this data a real maturity in thinking. And I think it's also highlighting, again, the fact that this is an issue that has to be dealt with. One size will not fit all. There's no single solution, few, if any, magic bullets. And that even though, S/4HANA is continually moving up the innovation food chain itself, it'll never move as fast as business innovation itself. So we're still going to continually have, as we saw, in several points in this data, the need for standardization and the need for customization simultaneously. That's not, actually we call it extensions now, I think. Let's not even use that word. We'll have these business extensions moving forward. And that's, again, a good thing. That's what technology should be enabling.
From my perspective, I'm happy that the SAP ecosystem is talking about this problem openly. I remember, years ago, everyone, including me, we used to complain about, oh, the business is asking for this so quickly, but how do you do it with so much custom? And it was a complaint that you do when you're, in the hallway or, having coffee. It was like a talk, right? You just complain about it and go back and do it. Now I feel the industry is taking notice. The SAP ecosystem is taking notice. They're talking about the big elephant in the room. They're acknowledging that, yep, we do have a problem. And that is, 50% of, how you get to the solution. You acknowledge the problem, you, you measure the problem, you size it up, which is exactly what this survey is, right? 110 companies or so, put some thought and effort and, give some numbers. So now you have, the size of the problem. Now the next 50% is how do you resolve it, right? And that, I think the SAP ecosystem and the industry is already on its way. 50% is already done when you acknowledge the problem and you know how big of it is. So that's one thing that I'm personally very happy about.
You know what they say, it's 50% of the, once you acknowledge the problem, that's 50% of the way to solving it. So sorry for that. So let's jump into the questions. Here's a question to Vaidya. How does the use of low code help enterprises with the custom code issues?
The low code helps you in two ways. First and foremost, actually more than two ways, actually, to be honest. One is it helps you get into the clean code concept, keeping your standard processes by keeping away any of the new customizations coming in. And also like us, like Pillir, we actually take out the customizations as well. So decustomize it, right? So from a technical standpoint, it lets you, get to a cleaner code. But from a business standpoint, which is more critical, is it gives you agility. It lets you do things and meet your business needs in a much faster, lower cost, like what we had in the pandemic, like how many companies had to change their processes very quickly, right? And not everybody did it in time. Something like a low-code, no-code tool will, let you go like way faster at a much lower cost and much lower risk. And also with respect to S/4HANA migration, it also reduces the risk when you're thinking about changing the heartbeat of the company, right? So that's tons and tons of benefits. So
yeah. Josh, here is a question I think you like. So is SAP's push of RISE and BTP in line with these market survey results?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, absolutely. Obviously, RISE is really about, incenting the market to move to the cloud, to move to this clean core. That's driving a lot of thinking. Again, it's true to a certain extent. You can use RISE to just lift and shift. But I think what RISE is incenting a lot of companies to think strategically about these customizations, and I think that's important. I think BTP, the business technology platform, exists as the staging place for the extensions that will either replace the customizations or create the new innovations. Of course, that will be if you as a customer are going to live in the SAP cloud. And there's a whole nother story about why, what is BTP's position in the market relative to the hyperscalers, which we don't have time to go into. But without a doubt, these two initiatives are absolutely focused in part on dealing with this issue of how do you get to a clean core? What do you do with the fact that, as we've said now, I hope enough that it's really sunk in, just because you're on the clean core doesn't mean you're done with innovation, you're done with building extensions or edge computing. So I think there's a good sync there, and watching how SAP evolves those two will help a lot of folks understand what their next steps are going to be down the road as well.
Yeah. Okay, I think we got to the last question. Vaidya, what is the best way to see if low-code solutions are good for my company?
Try it out. There is no better way than trying it out. There are low-code solutions. Honestly, there's different flavors of low-code solutions, and there is no one size that fits all, right? There are low-code solutions where you may need to build a separate team, and there are low-code solutions like us, which will fit into the SAP COE itself, right? So I think you need to try it out as to whether it fits for you. Pick up a problem, pick up a use case, and really any low-code solution, including us, would take like a few weeks to try it out, right? Specific to Pillir, we do provide a free proof of value that you can download it. You can get a dashboard which gives you a view of the technical debt. How much customizations do you have? More importantly, how much are you spending per year on those customizations? What's your cost to keep the lights on? And then you can actually try out by taking a few customizations, decustomize it, and move it to the low code automatically. But again, all of those things can be tried out. So visit our website, pillir.io, and try it out. You will be pleasantly surprised. I promise you about that.
Well, this has all been really, really interesting. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. If we didn't answer your question, we will follow up via email. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Thank you, Josh and Vaidya.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been fun, as always. I appreciate it.
And thanks for our listeners here. And have a great rest of the day.